All right, we're having a look at the Lincoln MKC, the latest entry into one of the hottest segments in the auto industry, the small SUV. Market leaders already, of course, would be the X3 from BMW, Q5 from Audi, the RDX from Acura. Some of the new entries, even in this past year, are the new Macan from Porsche. You've got the NX from Lexus, and this, the MKC from Lincoln. So it's based on the Ford Escape platform. But what they've done is they've lowered the roof down to give it a more sleek silhouette. They adjusted the seats in the inside in order to accomplish that. And a lot of people think it's just a rebadged Ford, but it's not. Lincoln had a totally separate engineering and design team work on this vehicle. Sure, they're using common parts and platforms, but it's being developed totally separately. Not a bad looking car. I would say I'm kind of neutral on the design. The front definitely screams Lincoln. Nice looking LED marker lights with HIDs as standard equipment. Around the back, that's really the part of this vehicle that looks the most like some of the German imports. Is it a copy of the Q5 from Audi? Well, you decide. I think it's heavily influenced. The rest of the vehicle has a very German look to it. If you took the nose off and squinted just a little bit, it looks a little bit like a Tiguan, maybe like the Q5. The wheels certainly look like that. They range in sizes from 18, 19, and even 20-inch wheels, depending on which trim you get. All of the MKCs sold in Canada come with all-wheel drive, and we're shooting this on a day here on the West Coast where we typically don't get snow. We've had a light dusting of snow overnight. 2 available engines, more on that in just a second. Now inside is kind of different. You decide whether it's something you like or maybe something you'll take a pass on. Now, I like car companies that make some mistakes, correct them, and go back to what works. And you can see that with the My Lincoln touch system here. They have the screen in the center of the dash where you have the 4 corners, phone, navigation, climate, and entertainment. It's a touch screen system. Before, with some of the other Lincoln products, you used to have swipes, touch sensitive, very similar to that Cadillac Q system. But what they've done is they've reverted back to good old buttons and switches below that. Got good old fashioned rotary dials and buttons for the radio and the heat. The stuff you use all the time is right there. And it's simple and it's easy to use. There's redundant controls on the steering wheel. If you want to interact with the My Lincoln touch system, you can do that through the steering wheel. Now, we've seen this for a while from Ford and Lincoln. They have the buttons on the steering wheel control 2 different screens in the cluster behind the steering wheel. It's all very intuitive if you've used the Ford or Lincoln before. It can take a while to learn if you haven't, but once you master it, it really is quite simple. Couple of things I'm not crazy about with this vehicle. This is competing with some high-end products, and when you look at the surround around the radio, it's got that sort of satin finish, but it's plastic. You look at the new Ford Mustang, same company, and all the stuff you see that looks like aluminum in that car is aluminum. Why couldn't Lincoln have gone that extra step and put some proper materials around the radio, something that you interact with all the time, and have it look much more polished and upscale? They decided not to do that. You'll also notice surrounding the center cluster is the park, reverse neutral drive, sport buttons for the transmission. So when you're driving, you start the car with the push button there, and you push the button to go into drive or to park or what have you. The problem is when you're in a parking lot and you're going from reverse to park or you're parallel parking, you've got to go back and forth. And here's one thing that I did. I was trying to turn off a phone call on the screen, and because it was driving, I wanted to push, so I put my thumb on the console and pushed the button to stabilize it. But what I didn't realize is I actually turned the engine off while I was driving with my thumb. Now, the good thing is I was only doing 2-3 kilometers an hour and I was pulling up in front of my house. That's why I was getting off the phone. But that's not a good placement for that. So this push button transmission thing is kind of, different. But is it better? I don't think so. It's one of those technology for technology's sake. The rest of the interior is just fine. Soft touch materials on the dash. I like the simple look of the dash. The console is nice and big in the middle for your drinks and your sunglasses and what have you. The back seat isn't the biggest in this class. Got to remember, it's built on the Ford Escape platform, which isn't the biggest in its class. So you're definitely going to notice that. If you're looking for a big vehicle in the small SUV range, the Q5 from Audi really, I think, is the segment leader there in the X3. But overall, nicely finished. A few little quirky things. You have to decide whether you like that or not. This vehicle is sold with two EcoBoost engines, turbocharged, direct injection, 4 cylinders. The previous premium engine was the 2-liter in the Ford and Lincoln lineup, 240 horsepower. That's the same engine that's used in the Evoque from Range Rover. Now this car is also available with the new 2.3-liter direct injection turbocharged EcoBoost engine with 285 horsepower and 305 foot-pounds of torque. That's the most power and torque available in this class of vehicle if you're looking at direct gas competitors. Now other lines like BMW with the X3, Mercedes with the GLK, Audi with the Q5, all have available diesel engines which have much more torque. Now those numbers I pointed out to you are all running on high-grade premium gas. You can run this vehicle on regular gasoline. Of course, the torque and the horsepower will be diminished, and Lincoln is not divulging what those numbers are. Now on top of that, standard on all MKC models is continuously controlled dampening, which is adaptive suspension. The only unfortunate thing is you have to get into it to change it through the onboard computer system in the instrument cluster. There's no quick touch button here on the dashboard, but you can preset the way you want the car to drive in the drive mode and the sport mode. In the comfort setting, the suspension really is quite soft. And you notice that the car kind of bobs around a little bit on its suspension. And that gives the more traditional luxury feel that some Lincoln buyers still want. But hit it into the sport and performance modes and it firms everything up. The one thing I have to hand it to Lincoln and Ford is the steering. The electric power steering feel is quite good. You throw this vehicle into the corners and it has very good feedback to the driver. So I do appreciate that. Now, having spent a week with this MKC, the one thing I can tell you is the more time I drive it, the more I actually like it. Some might find some of the settings a little bit soft, but I gotta tell you, if you're driving around the city doing your everyday stuff, you want a comfortable, smooth, and powerful vehicle, and this has all of that. I really think the star of the show is this new 2.3-liter direct injection EcoBoost engine. It's the same engine that's in the Mustang, by the way, and it is good. It's very good. If you're thinking of buying the Mustang, definitely try it with the EcoBoost engine because there's no fault at all with the engine. So the more I spend the time with the engine, with the MKC overall, the more I can appreciate all the little things that Lincoln did to make this a vehicle that's going to appeal to the masses. And I think a lot of things they've done are right on the money. The Lincoln does have an attractive starting price, just under $40,000. A bit misleading though, because in order to get the features on it that you want, you're gonna have to buy packages. They start at $2,250. The next one up is $7,500. The $49,000 2.3-liter EcoBoost we have here, you can get packages on top of that. The one you see here, $55 grand, not an inexpensive small SUV. So if you keep the price down, I think it can be attractive, but this car does not live in a vacuum. The one that I think is the best value overall and very well made is the RDX from Acura. Starts at 41 grand, fully kitted out with everything in it. It's $44,000, and that's really hard to beat. So what is the compelling reason to choose the Lincoln over a lot of the established products? It's got a lot of high-tech equipment in here, and it is a solid vehicle. It feels well made. The engine is, I think, the star of the show. The suspension can be tuned just the way you like it. So there's no reason not to buy it. Is there a reason to buy it? That's really up to you.